Welcome everyone, welcome one, welcome all to See My World, a festival of Pan-African experiences. My name is Tunde Adikoya.
My name's Robert Croll. Welcome to See My World Festival 2020.
This is the gaff, bro.
Welcome to the gaff. Anyway.
It's gully, innit?
You know what I mean? I like them cushions though still, you know what I mean?
Well, man moved in about a week ago.
So today, what are you looking forward to?
I mean, everyone got to see the intro and what this is all about, and really, I'm just looking forward to being. Do you get me? Being freedom, being free through expression. Do you know what I mean? Curation, programming, production, and obviously just doing that with family, doing that with friends. You know what I mean? Like me and you, our journey and what we've done up until this point to get here. It's been a madness, bro. COVID and all of that. What about you?
Just learning more about our Pan-African history. That's what I'm looking forward to most, really, and just enjoying the experience. And one of the greatest things about what's happened so far is the fact that it's drawn together so many like-minded people that are interested in the melanin, our Pan-African history, the fact that we're kings and queens, educators, inventors, inspirers, people that have created technologies that have taken us into the cosmos. And for me, I'm looking forward to a lot of these events, the workshops we've got the live events on Saturday, we've got world premieres,
films and that. Shout out to @Pack75 for that. Yeah. Shout out Pack75.
Yeah, shout out all our sponsors as well for all the activities they've put on and allowing us to collaborate with them.
Yeah.
There's so much to look forward to. We've got this in conversation with Hakim Adi, Professor Hakim Adi, who wrote the book on the 1945 Pan-African Congress. Looking forward to that, setting the tone.
Yeah, Professor Hakim Adi, you know what I mean, historian, author, serious, you know what I mean. I suppose one of the individuals that has really help us revisit and acknowledge, you know what I mean, and historical history. And yeah, people like Akala, serious dons.
Looking forward to Akala, he's a bad man.
He's serious.
Proper.
He's serious.
Proper.
He's serious.
So we've got some serious questions coming out for you as well.
Yeah.
Stay locked in. I know some of you sent in your questions, some cheeky questions. I know they were in there. Yeah. So I think that one might get a bit spicy, you know, I'm not going to lie.
You know what I mean? Keep him man on his toes. You know the one, because everyone wants to know what's coming up next as far as what they're going to be asked. But I feel it's going to be an interesting one because the audience have put into this whole, and that's what it's about, isn't it? It's that exchange between ourselves and the audience, who can help shape mindsets and ideas moving forward for the Pan-African community as well. So yeah, I think that's something that I'm also looking forward to as well.
One thing we also want to say to you guys as well is that this is a solution-focused festival. So if you guys have got any solutions to the global social justice issues or anything that's Pan-African related, please message us, follow us on Big People Community and See My World Fest. It's a solution-focused conversation that's set up by activities that are project-based learning. So whether it's a workshop, whether it's a live event, whether it's a question time, whether it's a panel event, whether it's an exhibition, we've got the archive on our website. Please send us as many messages as possible so that we can learn. This is a completely learning environment. It's a pilot for us. Obviously we delivered something, Pack at 70, 5 years ago.
5 years? That long ago?
5 years ago now, bro.
That was quick.
I remember such a long time ago.
Yeah, I remember that. I think that was when I first got into the understanding Pan-Africanism. It was about 5 years ago. And actually it was based on the event that you put together alongside other host of community groups and institutions. And yeah, I think that really transformed me as a person, understanding where I'm at within the place of the world. You know what I mean? And I think it's brought me to this place now. Do you know what I mean? Where I'm also now, based on learnings, I want to transfer that same knowledge out there. Do you know what I mean?
I have to be honest, man. It wasn't until I got into my 30s that I even knew about Pan-Africanism. And one of the reasons why I helped to facilitate that event is because I didn't know much about it. I did philosophy, sociology and culture studies at university. Yeah. And I started reading a little bit about Marcus Garvey and this one and Mura Musa and da-da-da-da. But really I didn't know much about my melanation at all. So I feel like for me, I just want to participate in the learning process. 100. And I want to be part of the solution. Yeah. So all of you guys, make sure you're part of the solution. We're not here to talk, and you're not here to listen to us.
Just chatting.
What we think. No. Who cares? Really, at the end of the day, it's what you think. Yeah. So make sure you engage with us. Follow us at Big People Community. See My World Fest, and let's get it cracking.
At See My World. Also the hashtag as well, hashtag See My World Fest as well. Any of your feedback, any of your thoughts, you know what I mean? Just log them in there as well, yeah?
Live streaming, seemyworld.net. You can still get tickets to some of the events. Go to the Eventbrite. All the information's on our website. I like the website, you know.
It's hard, isn't it? Like, look, can you lot see at the top there? Yeah, you got like an
That one
about up there, is it there? Where is it? About, you got the archive, you get me contact, obviously if you want to shout us, you know what I mean, and obviously future workings and stuff. And the exhibitions, we've got 2 exhibitions on there at the moment. One from the MMU postgrad students surrounding the 75th Pan-African Congress, and we have See My Dunya, an exhibition of Somali Mancunian experiences, and yeah, that was a brilliant project that launched in 2019. So yeah, you'll see the photos in there, all copyrighted as well, so don't try a thing. Don't try it, you know what I mean? Yeah, don't try it. Yeah, so yeah, 100%. Yeah, but yeah, log into the website, let us know what you're saying, and I hope you enjoy it.
And final thing, just want to big up all our sponsors, because at the end of the day, like literally 6 weeks ago, we had nothing. Nada, nothing. And then because of them, you know, we've got MIF, we've got Shock Out, we've got TAP, we've got
Manchester
42nd Street,
University,
MMU, University of Manchester,
European Social Fund, Arts Council, Habisha CAF, who else is in there? Just the Poetry Library, Manchester, yeah, pure heads, and that's it, and that's galvanised over the space of 6 weeks. So
thank you guys, thank you so much, because this was a dream of ours, like what, 4 years ago?
4 years ago.
And in a pandemic it come together, so it never would have come together without all of your support. So thanks to the sponsors, and also I want to thank all the team members that have helped put this beautiful set together.
Shout out to the team.
The website, the scribing, BSL, social media. Like this, it's been an amazing team that's put this whole festival together. So at the end of the day, big up yourselves as well.
Yeah, in love with the process, loved it. Big up. All right, so stay tuned. We've got Hakim Adi up next.
See you shortly. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling calm.
Calm,
and it's
is it?
so good to see you. I've not seen you in fact. What, you did a book launch, wasn't it, of your book, Pan-Africanism? That was the last time I saw you.
In London?
No, I think it was at the Cartmore Centre in Longside, no?
Yeah, that's right. That was about 3 years ago.
Yeah. How have you been since then? How's life treating you?
Busy. I'm writing another book, so I've been busy.
All right then. So what's this? Is this an exclusive? You're going to tell us a little bit of an exclusive about your new book?
Yeah, this is an exclusive.
All right then. Let's have a little. Right. So we'll get into the book. Then. So, yeah. So thank you so much for participating and helping us to consecrate this festival. Really appreciate in such challenging times.
You're welcome anytime. No
we're
problems.
sticking together, all of us, as well as the audience. We're all here for the right reasons, the same reasons. So we're gonna basically just want to have an honest conversation.
Okay.
This isn't an academic conversation. This is a human-to-human conversation about your experience.
Glad to hear it.
As a Pan-African person first. Okay. So I'm going to jump into some questions with you, okay? So, give us the top 3 things that you've learned about your journey on this research for the Pan-African Congress, the 5th one that happened in 1945 in Manchester.
Okay. Well, I suppose that there are some things connected with the research itself and what I've learnt, what I've learnt about the Congress, I've learned about those who are involved in it. And then there are some things connected with people that I've met along the way. So first of all, I suppose, the first person to mention is Marika Sherwood, who I wrote that book, 1945 Manchester Pan-African Congress Revisited, that we wrote in 1995. We had worked together before that, for a few years, and we worked together setting up BASA in 1991 and so on. But That was the first book I wrote with Marika. And then we wrote another book together, and we collaborated over, now over 30 years, almost 35 years together. So she is one consequence, you could say, of my research, or our relationship, our friendship, and so on.
Okay.
And then also with people in Manchester. I'm not going to name everybody in Manchester that I've met as a result, but Manchester is the city that I visit most often in Britain outside London. So I tend to know more people in Manchester than anywhere else apart from London in this country. So that to me is something significant. So I have some good friends in Manchester. And as you were just saying, the last book, Pan-Africanism, a history book, was launched in London, but it was also launched in Manchester. Most of the books I've written, including the children's books, have been launched and very well accepted by people in Manchester. So I have a kind of special place in my heart for Mancunians.
Good.
As I said, Manchester is my favourite city outside of London and so on. So I'm not going to name everybody's name because I'll probably leave somebody out and people will get upset with me. But just to big up, everybody in Manchester, and thanks for their support. And there are some other people actually who are slightly outside Manchester, but always come to Manchester to support me, and I appreciate them very much too. So that's one thing I would say that's important that you learn, is that whatever you do, you don't really do it on your own. It's all about people who support, who give you a place to stay, who help you with various things when you're writing or when you're researching or just in life. So that's, very, very important. And I always say that whatever we do, we do it really as part of a collective.
Of course.
We don't do it on our own. We don't achieve things on our own. So that's
Never.
one thing. Then the Congress, to talk about the history of the Congress a little bit, I would say one thing that sticks out about the Congress, or there are probably two things I would say. One is firstly, the fact that it was organized. It's the most famous of all the Pan-African gatherings. Those held in Europe, America, even those in Africa. It's probably still the most important, most famous, which everybody kind of uses as a sort of guide. Everybody claims to kind of represent or to be, whether they do or they don't. So that's very important, and it's come out of the community in Manchester as well as those who were activists in Britain at that time. But one of the key things about that is that the Manchester Pan-African Congress was organised by a coalition of organisations, essentially all the main Black organisations, African and Caribbean organisations in Britain, as well as some in Africa, came together to organise this event. So that in itself is remarkable.
Of course.
Not just the organisations in Manchester, let me just emphasise that. The organisations in Britain came together as one to organise that. So that to me is something very, very important that today we shouldn't lose sight of. Because everybody knows, I know how difficult it is to unite people, to organise an event.
Trust me.
But they organised that, not, as I say, throughout Britain, they got people together. People of different political ideologies and ideas, different organizations, men, women, and so on and so forth. So I think that's very, very important. And one could go on about that forever. It's probably very few occasions on when that's happened in the history of Britain, or history of African and Caribbean people in Britain. So that's one thing that's very very important of it, and we shouldn't lose sight of that.
Never.
Not only did they come together, but they generally agreed on the political orientation that they were adopting at that time, based on their experience and based on the experience of the Pan-African movement and the wider political movement, the international communist movement, of which people like George Padmore had been a part.
Very influential.
And yeah, very, very important. And they involved people who were still communists, like Desmond Buckle, who doesn't very often get a mention, but he was also involved, a communist from what is today Ghana. So the politics then of the Congress is also very, very important. And it stands out from nearly every other Pan-African gathering that there's been, whether in Europe, America, and even in Africa. There's maybe one other which is similar, but Manchester really hit it. And that is that all the delegates were representatives of, as I said at the time, representatives of the masses of the people. That means workers, farmers, the people who produce all the wealth in the world.
Kept it going.
Yeah, those who produce everything. And it's sometimes forgotten today that it's not bankers or stockbrokers or
exactly
CEOs that produce anything. It's the working people who produce, whether the workers in this country or the workers in other countries, who produce everything, who produce all wealth, all value is produced by workers or farmers and so on. So they said, well, in this new period when we're aiming to get rid of colonial rule and so on, you know, the force that's going to do that is going to be the working people. And so they based their Congress on representatives of the workers. They said, we don't need lawyers and doctors and professors and all these kind of people. We need ordinary people, workers, to be there. So that's the kind of root of the Congress. But at the same time, if you look at the politics, you know, in the famous photos that were taken, you see the slogans of that Congress, which are not just concerned with Africa or the Caribbean or Black people, although there are slogans against the color bar in Britain, against Jim Crow in the US, but there are also things against anti-Semitism, very topical today. There are things about the Arabs and Jews should unite in Palestine against British imperialism. There's slogans about oppressed people of the world should unite. There's a slogan, labor in the white skin cannot emancipate itself whilst labor in the black skin is enslaved. In other words, that all workers, not just Black workers, but all workers need to unite for their common interests, their common aims, and so on. So this, what I would call internationalism, and it manifested itself in other ways, was very, very important. And at the time the Congress was held, they actually hoped to hold another Congress in Africa 2 years later. With the support of workers in Britain. So they were very keen. They saw their struggle as part of the struggle of the workers of all countries, including the workers of Britain. And again, today, this politics is sometimes forgotten about. And they didn't have that politics just because they were, you know, Marxists or whatever, though some of them may well have been Marxists, but because of their experience in this country, their experience in the Caribbean, their experience in Africa, and their experience internationally of what had been going on in the last 20 years that they'd been through. And of course, the most important thing, I suppose, they'd been to was the Second World War.
Exactly.
Where the workers of the world had defeated fascism. Not the governments. Some governments were against fascism, and some governments weren't. That's another issue. But the working people of the world fought, gave their lives, defeated fascism, and had high expectations of what was going to happen in the post-war world, including, of course, the end of colonial rule and so on. So they were very much part of that movement, saw themselves as part of it. But at the same time, they recognized that it was the workers in the colonies. Just before the Congress was held, there was a general strike in Nigeria. Okay. The whole country came to a standstill. So they understood that if the workers decide to do something, to go on strike, everything stops.
Power.
It's the workers that have power. They had lived through the labor rebellions in the Caribbean in the 1930s, where again, colonialism had almost been overthrown in the Caribbean.
That's right.
So they knew from their experience the power that working people had, and they were determined to harness it to end colonial rule. So that grounding everything in that outlook was very important. And then lastly, if you look at the resolutions of the Congress, particularly in relation to Africa, you see this politics that I've described manifesting itself. So they called for an end to the colonial borders in Africa. They called for an end to the political systems which had been imposed on Africa under colonial rule. They called for an end to what they called the monopoly of capital, the capital-centered economic system. So they said that colonialism must come to an end, and they would use force if necessary to end it. And they said that it was the workers and farmers that were going to be the force which was going to liberate Africa and the Caribbean.
Wow.
So they laid out a very clear path for the anti-colonial struggle and a vision, if you like, of a new type of society, which still hasn't been brought into being in Africa, the Caribbean, or anywhere else, generally speaking. So they had very, very clear vision and politics and so on. So I think those are the things which stand out for me, which I really came across when I first started looking at it 25 years ago, or whatever it was, a bit longer than that, and which have, stayed with me, and which make the Congress so important. It's not like the other Congresses. Nobody celebrates the, Congress from 1919 or 1921 or 1923 or 1927. Nobody talks about it, generally. 1945, everybody talks about it, and it's for those kinds of reasons that it's so important.
Excellent. Well, thanks for that. I've learned a lot from what you've just said there as well, and I think some of the principles there about galvanizing people that work for the engine room of countries, and those individuals having the power and having the say and having the freedom and the confidence to express equality in a way that can influence the whole world and bring wealth to everybody in an equilateral way. And I feel like the fact that they had that vision, and that vision was so clear cut back then, is still so needed today, because that's something that isn't, like, when was the last time you've heard a nation say, we want, apart from Israel and Palestine, where they want to basically clear all the lines to a land? I mean, that's mental. That's such a bombastic thing in 2020, no?
Well, what can you say? I mean, Israel is, a government, an anti-people regime, which is, which has deprived the Palestinian people of their land, of their rights, for not just in 2020, but for the last, 70 years plus. And a regime which, unfortunately, or whatever you look at it, is supported by the big powers, principally by the US, but also by the government of Britain and other countries. And it's also got to the stage today where if you criticize the government of Israel, people call you accuse you of anti-Semitism, which is shows you how much influence that government and its supporters have.
Of course.
But like they say, facts are stubborn things. So
They stick around.
Yeah, you say things as they are. You tell it like it is. People don't like. Some people don't like it. That's too bad.
That's right. That's right.
But,
so from that, then, I'd love to move on to how do you see the comparative state of 1945 to where we are today? And if I could just have a short answer to this so we can move on to what you want the conference to do and deliver moving forward. So how do you see it being comparative to today?
Well, it's a different world today, obviously, in some ways, you would think, but there are also in some ways many similarities, as I said earlier.
Okay.
Many of the demands that were made in 1945 haven't yet been realized, as far as Africa is concerned, as far as the Caribbean and other countries are concerned. The other thing to remember is that the first session of the Manchester Congress was about racism in Britain. What in those days they called the colour bar. So in 1945 they were talking about the colour bar, and which of course in those days was legal. And 2020 we've had a year where people are still talking about racism, Eurocentrism, all the consequences of slavery, colonialism, and so on, which they were dealing with in 1945. So the world is different. It's a different world, but many of the problems are the same. And it's the same political system. It's the same economic system. They're the same kinds of disadvantage. Of course, they also reference what was going on in the US at the time, and 75 years later, we see the situation in the US. Today, it is...
Mad.
You could say it's different, but you'd be hard-pressed to say whether it was better or it was worse.
Of course.
Today than it, in the 1945. So whatever advances we've made or whatever differences there are still these big challenges for us to overcome. And what is similar is that just as in 1945, same today, we are not the decision makers. In other words, we live in political systems or under political systems where we don't make the decisions. The decisions are imposed upon us, and that was the same in 1945. And they were calling for, especially after the war, which is, fought against fascism and supposed to be fought for democracy, they were calling for a more democratic world. And 75 years later, we're still calling for a more democratic world, a world where we are the decision makers.
Of course.
We decide everything. We don't have that. People claim that we live in a democracy, but how can it be a democracy when you don't make any decisions? Democracy is government of the people, by the people, for the people. We don't have that. US doesn't have that. France doesn't have that. African countries don't have that. Most of the Caribbean, with maybe the exception of Cuba, doesn't have that. So that's a big challenge that faces us, how to get that in 20.
How that translate today? Like everyone's been talking about that documentary, social media documentary on Netflix, about how systems would and countries would govern people, and now it's our technocratic society and our own mirrors that are controlling the way we think and the things that we buy. So it's interesting, that comparative analysis between the political state and now the state, the
Yeah,
consumerist state.
maybe, but there's still people behind all these things. It's not that. It's not that we're in the time of the Terminator.
Yeah,
We're not being ruled by machines.
Of course
We're
not.
being ruled by human beings. But we're being ruled by a handful of human beings, whereas the majority of us have no say, and that's what needs to change.
Of course.
Because as long as that system of rule by a minority continues, we have all the problems that we're familiar with: economic problems, political problems, racism, people being denied their land and their rights, as in Palestine, pandemics, all of these things, devastation of the environment. All of these things are caused because the world is ruled by a few people. The economic system is geared in the interests of a few people. And that is what needs to be brought to an end.
Of course. So on that note, in terms of consecration for the conference, what kind of aspirations do you have to come out of the conference? See My World Conference.
Well, I always think I've been attending these commemorative events since 1995, so that's 25 years.
Wow.
And something happens, and then, next week it's over. And then it starts up again in 2024 and a half, or whatever it is. And we start all over again. So I think I started off by saying one of the key things about 1945 was people coming together to kind of create something. And of course, they had an organization which didn't last forever, but lasted for a few years. And anyway, but I think one of the key things is to try and build something from an event like this. Obviously, it's up to everybody involved what kind of thing that is, but something that lasts. And it could be something, it could be something relating to history and understanding the history and involving young people in finding out more about the history of the Congress, the community in Manchester, and so on. I know some people are already doing those kind of things, but there's certainly more work that could be done and extend it even beyond or outside Manchester. But certainly to start off with something involving young people. And we have a problem in this country that young people, especially young people of African and Caribbean heritage, don't really like history. Not many people want to study history at school. Even fewer want to study at university and so on. The reason for that is because the kind of history they're presented with excludes people like them. It's a very Eurocentric curriculum and so on. But by not studying or understanding history, we kind of lose a lot, because we study history not just to understand the past, but to understand the present and to be able to act in the present with confidence and to change the present and change the future. So history is a very, very important subject, and it's good to get young people involved in it, understanding it and so on, and understanding all the amazing people that were around in Manchester in the early days. I see now Len Johnson is becoming popular again. I don't know why he's suddenly become popular, maybe this year. But there are many important people and important communities. So that's one thing that I think is very important. And to build something, we have a Young Historians Project, which I'm involved in, which does that kind of work, but there's certainly room for others to be involved, to build on it. So that's one thing I think that's important. And then the other thing is I've kind of outlined the politics of that time, which was to unite people, to unite not just African and Caribbean organizations, but to unite people in general, and to see them working together in their common interests and so on. And that's also very much part of the history of Manchester. And if you go back to the 18th century, Manchester was one of the centers of the struggle against human trafficking, slavery, and so on. Thousands of people in Manchester took part in that struggle.
The women's vote as well.
Nobody talks about it today. So building on those traditions and involving young people in, political activities which unite people, which try and address the problems that they face, I think is also very, very important, even if it's done in a small way. Like, what are the problems facing young people in Manchester? How are they involved in trying to bring about solutions to them? So establishing something which unites everybody is not,
Easy task.
Doing things is never easy. But if we are to celebrate, we celebrate 1945 by kind of emulating it. There's no point in celebrating and then we say, oh, that was very good, but we're going to do something completely different. So to me, you celebrate it by building on it, by saying, okay, this is what they could do then. Why can't we, even if we attempt to do something, it's better than not attempting anything. So as I say, I think those two areas for me are very, very important.
Excellent. Well, so for us, this is a communal attempt, a collaborative attempt by multiple organisations, multiple young professionals in all different fields to put on a set of activities that is solution-focused, project-based learning approaches, and a unifying intergenerational intention so that we can talk, we can share, we can learn, we can activate, and we can sustain our thoughts, our efforts, our conversations. So we're really, really blessed to have your presence, and we're really blessed to have the team that we have putting the live stream on, doing the camera work, doing the marketing. And I hope that everyone out there has appreciated what's been said today. We can't thank you enough, Professor Hakim Adi, for your time.
You're welcome.
And your continued and sustained support. And we'll be seeing you every day. So on that note, in terms of youth, we've got the youth panel tomorrow on seemyworld.net. You can live stream that. I think it's 6 till 8. And we have a film from Sue Andy, The Tribe of Freedom, which is basically chronicling the families of the attendees of the 5th Pan-African Congress in 1945. So just building off the back of that. Please follow us at Big People Community and seemyworld.fest. If you want to give people your your website so people can learn more about what you do, Professor Hakim?
You can Google me or find me at hakimadi.org. Very easy to find.
Cool. So, guys, if you want to do more research on history on this specific event, this is the guy. Go onto his website, learn, buy the books, read, and come back and have something to contribute. If you've got a solution, remember, this is solution focused, that anyone can have their say. If you've got solutions, please send us messages, whether it's on our socials or in the Zoom calls, etc., any event, because you guys, you're the audience, but you're partners in the solution. So make sure you stay locked in. Okay.
I should also say that if anyone, young people are interested in history, as I've mentioned, you should Google Young Historians Project, go to their website and you'll see the kind of work they're doing. If anyone wants to get involved in that, just get in touch with the Young Historians Project.
Excellent.
And we'll link you in.
Brilliant. Right, so Professor, I'm going to catch you soon. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you shortly. Signing out.
Take it easy.
Right. Akala coming next. Stay locked in.